Good morning, everyone, and really thank you for having me here in this beautiful African city and for giving me the opportunity to share my personal story and also the story of the inspiring possibility of Baobab. 15 years ago, I was working in the London advertising industry, promoting products I didn't believe in for clients who didn't appreciate it. And I ended up asking myself, what am I actually doing with my life? And this questioning led to an existential crisis. And the existential crisis blossomed into a full-blown nervous breakdown. And at the age of 25, I found myself unemployed and clinically depressed. At my lowest ebb, I looked around at the objects in my flat, and I thought to myself, the table is useful because you can put things on it. The sofa is useful because you can sit on it. The TV is useful because it can entertain. And I am the only thing in this room which has no purpose and no use whatsoever. And it was devastating. And I tried everything from antidepressants and psychotherapy to acupuncture and even faith healing, but nothing would make a blind bit of difference. Until one morning, completely out of the blue, I got a random phone call from a family friend offering me the opportunity to volunteer my marketing skills to a project in the Gambia. Having never been to Africa before, I can't say the idea appealed to me. Having been a passive consumer of the media back home, what occurred in my mind was the usual stuff: poverty, disease, child soldiers, corruption. And I thought, no, thank you. If I'm going to be suicidal, I'd much rather do it from the comfort of my own home. Thankfully for me, my friends and family had other ideas, and they put me on the aeroplane. And just a matter of days later, I arrived in the country that's known as the smiling coast of Africa, clinically depressed. And it's something of a personal miracle in my life that, having been in this condition for 6 months and seeing nothing but darkness, it took just 2 weeks in the warm embrace of the Gambia, and I came back to life. And instead of staying for just 6 weeks, I ended up staying for 4 years, running a social enterprise, working with local farmers. And I witnessed firsthand the abject failure of the aid model for development in rural Africa. And I learned that what these farmers really needed more than anything was very simple: a market. We would have a big tomato harvest one week, and then the next week I'd go back to the same community, the same household, and the kids who weren't in school the week before were now in school, just like that. Or they're building an extra room on the house so the whole family doesn't have to sleep in the same bed. And that felt really, really good, and I became inspired. And I started to look at how could we take this impact and really scale it up. And the answer, as it turns out, came in the form of a humble African fruit named Baobab. So, hands up in the audience if you've heard of the Baobab tree. That's a pretty good coverage, I think. I know, Susie, you have. For those of you who haven't, the next slide is for you. So, yes, it's that tree from The Lion King, Rafiki's tree, the tree of life, also made famous by The Little Prince, which is actually the world's best-selling children's book. But my personal favorite is the last one, which is the World Cup opening ceremony right here in South Africa, when they bought the African flags from all 4 corners of the stadium, and they constructed this magnificent multicolored baobab tree. And the announcer said, "This is the mighty baobab, the giver of life, the symbol of Africa." And then a little door opened in the baobab tree, and R. Kelly came out, wearing an all-in-one black leather jumpsuit with black leather cut-off mittens. And the moment was ruined. But it lived long in the memory. But for those of you who did know that there was a baobab tree, you may not have known that it has a fruit. And it does. And it's not just any fruit. The baobab fruit dries naturally on the branch, producing a nutrient-dense powder that has 6 times the vitamin C of an orange, twice the calcium of milk, 6 times the potassium of bananas. It's almost 50% fibre, and it has the highest antioxidant of any whole fruit. Also, within the fruit pulp contains a seed that has a vitamin-rich oil, which is perfect for use in cosmetics. So if there is such a thing as a superfood, baobab truly is it. But the most extraordinary thing about baobab, even more extraordinary than the tree itself, is the inspiring possibility it represents for rural Africa. These trees thrive in the driest, remotest, harshest, and hence poorest regions of Africa. There is no such thing as a baobab plantation. Every single tree is community or family owned and wild harvested. There are 10 million households in 32 different countries in Africa who can supply this fruit from a crop that already exists and currently goes mainly to waste. Now, National Geographic estimated if there was a global demand for baobab, that existing crop could be worth $1 billion to rural Africa. That is the scale of the opportunity. And with the global health and wellness industry demanding for new ingredients and really booming, it seems like a no-brainer. There's just one little thing standing in the way of this. 99% of people outside of Africa have never even heard of it. So, what would have to happen for this inspiring possibility to become reality? We would have to actually create that demand. We would have to manifest a market. Or, put in other words, we have to make baobab famous. And this has been the mission of myself and my company, Aduna, for the last 7 years. To start with, at the beginning, nobody was interested. But after 6 months, with the help of some cool packaging and a lot of persistence, we managed to get it into the leading trend-setting retailers in London. Great product, beautiful packaging, the perfect retailers. Job done. All we had to do was just sit back and watch the products fly off the shelves. Right? Wrong. In the first 2 months, we only sold 10 units. And I bought one of them. And I think my mum bought the rest of them. And we realized that if we didn't do something dramatic, that we could forget about creating even a $1,000 industry, let alone a $1 billion one. So we recruited a small army of volunteers inspired by the mission of creating a health trend in London that would ripple worldwide and cause this new sustainable market. And thanks to them, who camped in Whole Foods from 10 o'clock in the morning to 4 p.m. every day for 6 weeks, we took it from being in danger of being delisted to being the best-selling superfood in London. We then took this case study to a retailer called Holland & Barrett, which is a nationwide health food store in the UK. And we said, we've made baobab the best-selling superfood in London. Now we want to replicate that nationwide. And guess what? They said yes. However, our joy didn't last very long, as we soon discovered that driving rate of sale in 250 stores was very different from doing it with 10 stores in London. And again, we were faced with the reality. Do something about it or fail. And it was at that point that we learned about a nationwide entrepreneurship contest that was being run by Virgin, where the winners would get to pitch directly to Sir Richard Branson for a £250,000 marketing campaign. So we knew what we had to do. With 48 hours of the public voting left to go, our Make Baobab Famous campaign went viral, and we finished in first place. I got the opportunity to pitch directly to the great man himself and walked away with a lot of new friends and a rather large check. The next February, dreams became reality, and we rolled out our Make Baobab Famous campaign nationwide with a window takeover of 750 stores in almost every high street in the UK, and created a massive breakthrough in awareness of baobab. And if that wasn't enough, here's a real-life Baobab miracle. For the duration of this campaign, Holland and Barrett actually changed their name to Holland and Baobab. And trust me, that is not on the rate card. Over the course of 7 years, we've taken Baobab from complete obscurity to being a trending superfood, both in the UK and internationally, which is now being looked at by some of the biggest food manufacturers and personal care brands in the world. But the best bit I've left till last. All this time, we've been working in partnership in northern Ghana with a local community organisation. The communities where we work are subsistence level communities. That means there's no employment and they're literally living off the land. They have a 5-month rainy season during which they have to grow enough to keep a surplus in order to store or trade for the 7-month dry or hungry season. This Baobab crop arrives bang in the middle of the dry season and had previously had no value and no market whatsoever. In terms of income generation, this is not just like a small increment on top of what was already being earned, something like a fair trade premium. This is an entirely new revenue stream at the most vulnerable time of year. We're seeing producers in our communities who have multiplied their household income by up to 10 times. This is transformation. This year, we're purchasing more than 300 tons of Baobab from 1,000 women and employing more than 250 in our processing center. This work works. Now, we're currently working or sourcing from just 35 communities. Our local partner in Ghana estimates that there are 8,000 communities who could participate if the demand was there. The UN has now recognized the importance of this value chain and have partnered with us to build the supply as part of their $8 billion Great Green Wall project, which is fighting climate change, desertification, and extreme poverty in the Sahel. But if we build the supply, that means we've also got to build the demand. And that, I hope, is where you guys come in. I'm really happy that I found my purpose, and that is to be here today to bring you this message. But I'm not here just to share the story with you. I'm here to actually create with you, because we've come a long way in our project, but as it stands, it's not enough. We won't make it, and we can't do it alone. This is a community project. So the reality is that an editorial in Vogue, or a tweet from Rihanna, or a press conference from Naomi is going to do a lot more in terms of creating the market than anything the UN can do. And now, with a newly formed African Baobab Alliance, we have a charity in place that can also help to make that happen. So if anyone here feels inspired to help us to make Baobab famous, whether it's through what you do, what you know, who you know, or you're just interested, please come and see me, and together we can make sure that this is just the beginning. Thank you very much.